Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really diving into a fascinating stack of sources. It's all about those very first conversations, how they shape a baby's world.
Yeah, we've got quite a mix. Research papers, guides, insights, focusing right on that crucial period. The first couple of years, basically.
Exactly, when language just explodes, or, well, starts to.
And it seems like it's about so much more than just learning words, right? The materials make it really clear this is fundamental stuff. Brain building, connections.
Setting the stage for, well, everything later on. Learning, social skills.
Totally.
So our mission for this deep dive, really, is to understand how our voices, interact with those tiny developing brains.
We want to pull out the key bits on how babies actually learn to talk.
And, maybe even more critically, why the specific way we talk to them matters quite so much.
Yeah, there's some surprising science behind, the coos and babbles and how we respond.
Definitely. So get ready to unpack some of that.
Okay, let's jump in.
All right. So this critical period, the research consistently points to the first 3 years, doesn't it, as this pivotal window.
Yeah, pivotal is the right word. It's a time of just explosive brain growth. And it's not just about language, as the sources highlight.
Right. It's foundational for cognitive stuff, too.
Exactly. Things like memory, attention, how fast they process things, and crucially, that social-emotional bond. Attachment.
Okay, so when we talk about early language exposure,
Yeah.
especially speech directed at the baby, it's doing more than just filling up a mental dictionary.
Oh, much more. The material suggests it actively boosts how efficiently their brains process language, like in real time.
Wow.
And some studies even show that slower progress here early on can actually predict academic difficulties later. It's really part of their core cognitive wiring.
That's a really powerful link. So it's maybe less about just the sheer volume of words they hear.
Although volume matters.
Right. But it's also heavily about the kind of input, the quality.
Precisely. The sources really emphasize that these early chats, they aren't just isolated language lessons, they're deeply woven into building cognitive efficiency and emotional stability.
So when you have those, rich back and forth exchanges with a baby.
You're basically nurturing multiple parts of their development all at once, simultaneously.
And synergy seems key. I thought it was fascinating. One study specifically said the impact of child-directed speech on their expressive vocabulary.
How many words they use?
Yeah. It's actually explained by how efficient their language processing is.
Exactly. It's like the processing efficiency is the engine driving the vocabulary use.
Makes sense.
And then you layer in infant-directed speech, or parentese, which the research shows strengthens both those cognitive skills and the emotional bond.
Parentese, okay. We'll definitely dig into that more.
And specifically, those responsive interactions, that serve and return idea, that's directly linked to brain structure, language, and emotional well-being.
So the benefits all kind of feed each other. Better processing helps language. A strong bond makes them feel secure enough to explore and learn, including language.
Yeah, and it raises an interesting point the material touches on. If these areas are so interconnected, then challenges in one area, say maybe difficulties with secure attachment, could potentially ripple out and affect language indirectly.
Because maybe that secure base for exploring and learning isn't quite as solid.
Exactly. It suggests everything is really quite connected in early development.
Okay, this serve and return concept. The sources frame this as absolutely fundamental, building brain structure through just responding.
Yeah, think of it like, I don't know, a game of conversational tennis maybe, or building something together block by block.
Sorry?
The child initiates, that's the serve. Could be a sound, a gesture, a look, a coo, you name it.
And the adult.
The adult returns with a response.
Yeah.
You react, you acknowledge it, you engage with it.
So if a baby sort of coos, you don't just ignore it. You make eye contact, smile, maybe say something back, oh, hi, or imitate the coo.
Exactly that. And these simple back and forths, they seem small, but they're doing incredible work. They're physically strengthening neural connections.
Wow, literally wiring the brain for communication.
That's what the science suggests. And this responsiveness teaches infants two really key things. First, the social side of language. Hey, I make a noise, someone pays attention.
Right, my sounds have power.
Exactly. And second, crucially, it tells them their attempts to communicate are valued. They matter.
There was a great example in the material. A 2-month-old coos, parent looks, smiles, maybe touches their cheek, coos back, says, oh, you're talking.
And the baby feels seen, heard, maybe they coo again. that little exchange. It's reinforcing their attempts, sure, but it's also literally strengthening pathways for communication, social connection, emotional bonds. It's brain building in action.
Which leads us perfectly into parentese, or infant-directed speech IDS. Why does this way of talking work so well? Because, let's be honest, it can sound a bit funny to adult ears.
It definitely can.
Yeah.
But the sources define it really specifically. It's not just any baby talk. It's got distinct features, higher pitch overall, but also a wider range of pitch.
More sing-songy.
Yeah, exactly. Slower tempo, shorter sentences, longer pauses between things, and really importantly, exaggerated vowels.
Exaggerated vowels, like drawing them out.
Yeah, high B, something like that. Simpler words and grammar too, but, and this is crucial, it uses actual correct words and grammar.
Okay, so it's not wah-wah for water or choo-choo for train. It's real language, just delivered differently.
Precisely. And those acoustic features, they aren't random. They're perfectly suited to grab and hold a baby's attention. Research clearly shows babies prefer listening to parentese over regular adult talk.
That makes sense. And the slower pace, the pauses, must be super helpful for their little brains trying to sort out the sounds.
Absolutely vital. Think about how we talk normally. Words often run together. It's actually really hard to tell where one word ends and the next begins if you don't know the language.
Right, the segmentation problem.
Parentese makes those word boundaries much clearer with the slower speed and pauses. And those exaggerated vowels, they make the distinct phonetic sounds of the language pop. Easier to learn the building blocks.
So it helps them pay attention, find the words, and hear the sounds better. Okay, I can see why infants who get more parentese tend to be faster word recognizers and have bigger vocabularies later.
Exactly. The studies back that up: better word memory, faster learning of new words when they hear them in parentese. Plus, there's the whole emotional layer.
Bonding aspect.
Yeah, the positive emotion that usually comes with parentese really strengthens that caregiver-child connection. It's apparently almost universal across cultures, which tells you something about how fundamental it might be.
Now, this is important because the sources draw a really clear line between parentese and what they call traditional baby talk. They're not the same thing.
No, and it's a really critical distinction the material makes. Traditional baby talk is often where you get the nonsense words, the made-up sound.
Like the wah-wah example, or maybe special family words for things.
Exactly. Or sometimes incorrect pronunciations, maybe overly simplified sentences that aren't really grammatical.
So, while maybe saying, see the blinky blonk, might get their attention, the material suggests it could actually slow down vocabulary learning in the long run.
It potentially can, yeah. Because now the child has to learn two labels, the made-up one and the real word. It adds an extra step.
Whereas parentese uses the real words and correct grammar from the start.
Exactly, just delivered in that acoustically helpful way. It's like giving them the real tools, just making them easier to handle initially.
Looking at the comparisons in the sources, it's pretty stark. Parentese, actual word, grammatical. Traditional baby talk, often nonsense words, maybe ungrammatical.
Right. Pitch is high and varied in parentese, maybe just high and sing-songy in traditional. Pace is slower in parentese, can be fast or jumbled in traditional.
And the purpose. Parentese seems geared towards teaching and bonding. Traditional baby talk, maybe more just about grabbing attention.
That's the gist of it. And the developmental impact, according to the research, reflects that. Parentese actively promotes language learning. Too much traditional baby talk, especially if it replaces real words, might hinder it.
Okay, this leads to another really surprising bit from the research. The baby isn't just passively absorbing all this. They're actually an active participant.
This is fascinating. It seems to be a dynamic feedback loop. We instinctively use parentese, yes, but infant babbling itself, it's not just noise. It actually actively encourages adults to simplify their speech.
Wait, really? How?
When babies babble more, adults interacting with them tend to naturally use shorter sentences, fewer different types of words, more single-word replies.
So the baby sounds are somehow tuning the adult speech, making it more learnable for them at that specific moment. That's incredible.
That's what the findings suggest. It loops right back to serve and return, doesn't it? The baby serves with a babble, the adult returns with speech that's naturally, maybe unconsciously, adjusted to be easier for the baby to process right then.
Wow. So infants aren't just receivers. They're actively shaping their own learning environment.
One source actually described babbling as a tool the baby uses to get the linguistic input they need.
A tool. That completely reframes how you think about babbling. It's not just practice, it's communication already.
It really does. And it highlights just how important contingent responsiveness is. Responding to the baby quickly, to their vocalizations.
Talking with them, not just at them.
Exactly, because those timely, engaged responses are naturally tuned, it seems, to be just what the baby needs to hear.
Which has huge implications for parenting advice, right?
Right.
It's not just talk more, it's respond more, maybe. Respond well.
Yeah, focusing on the timing, the quality, the back and forth nature of the interaction, following the baby's lead seems incredibly important.
So let's wrap this up a bit. We've seen how those first coos, babbles, and our responses, they're part of this really quite sophisticated dance.
The serve and return. It's not just cute interaction. It's actively building brains, deepening connections, laying groundwork.
We've learned about parentese, that specific, sing-songy but grammatically correct speech, and why it works so much better than maybe some forms of traditional baby talk.
Right, using real words in that learnable format seems key. Avoids adding extra hurdles later on.
And maybe the most mind-bending part, the baby's active role. They're not just listening, they're actually cueing us, guiding us to give them the speech they need.
Yeah, shaping their own learning from the get-go. It really shows this whole process isn't just about learning words in isolation.
No, it's deeply tied into cognitive growth, emotional security. It's holistic.
Definitely.
So here's something to chew on, based on everything we've uncovered today. If a baby's babbling really is a kind of tool, actively designed to elicit the specific kind of speech input they need to learn most effectively at that very moment. What does that truly tell us about the innate drive, the sheer capacity for learning that babies possess right from day one?